Hi, as you know, my name is Mr. Miller and this is my So What video. In a So What video, you take an aspect of history not often studied and you explore the effects it's had on the world. Yo, Mr. M. Yes, me from the past. What is it? Yo, check it out. I'm gonna do World War II. No. World War One? No. Yo, what about Vietnam? No wars. Alright. I'm gonna do Solomon the Great. He had a crazy hat. Me from the past. Haven't you ever considered that history might be more than just an amalgam of bloody wars and fancy men wearing fancier hats? But, since you're so interested in war, I'm going to make an argument that one word that you've never heard of started all of World War II. And that is the Japanese word Kokutai. Kokutai began here, in the 1820s. This is the Mito School, the premier educational institution in Japan at the time, and attendance there was almost guaranteed to get you a position in government. Inventing the word was necessary because the idea of discussing Japan as a single cohesive unit in a time when it consisted of nothing more than a series of feudal landlords held together by a military dictator was kind of revolutionary. Really? Alright, cue the Beatles tune.
Say you want a revolution, well, you know, we all want to change.
Now that that's done, to make a long story short, there was a quick and successful coup, or government overthrow, that called for the Meiji Restoration, so called because a group of samurai got rid of the military dictator and restored this guy to the throne. His name was Meiji. Historians aren't very good at naming things. Anyway, the emperor was only there to begin with, after, there was different leaders, because about 600 years earlier, when the shogun kicked in that emperor's door, the emperor was all like, "Hear me out, bro. You win. Japan is yours. But those peasants out there think I'm a god. And if you kill me, they will rebel. But if you feed me cookies and let me keep my palace and continue my line, they'll love you." And that's exactly what they did. I'm paraphrasing, by the way. Anyways, the samurai who pulled off the coup claimed that their reason was that having an emperor was necessary to Japan's Kokutai. After the coup, the samurai and the emperor had to build a new government to replace the one they just overthrown, and everyone expected the new government to be perfectly representative of Kokutai. The problem is, it still didn't have a concrete definition beyond the fact that it described Japan as a whole. Here followed decades of debates on how to make the constitution, and the core argument in those debates was definition of Kokutai. The conservative point of view in these debates used Kokutai as an argument for direct and complete imperial rule. They presented Kokutai as the immutable soul of Japan and represented by the emperor's overarching power. The liberal side of the debate argued that replacing one absolute ruler with another would not be viewed favorably by all the modern nations with whom Japan had just recently begun intercourse. In the end, Kokutai became more complicated but no more clear. The general confusion regarding the term is well exemplified by an episode in 1884 when a court official, Sasaki Takeyuki, who, confused by the sudden and overwhelming use of the word Kokutai, secretly wrote to Kaneto Kentaro, Ito Hirobumi, and a very important person in the drafter of the Constitution's private secretary. He asked him for a definition in his letter. And in the letter, he claimed that he had always assumed that it referred to the unbroken imperial line, and I'm quoting directly now from the letter, but people are now speaking of land, peoples, language, and Western nations. Kenko's response was a rude letter telling Sasaki that Kokutai was not those things because Kokutai was eternal and immortal. When news of this exchange was heard by the drafter of the Constitution, he chastised Kenko and lectured him on the fluidity of Kokutai, defining Kokutai in English as the national organization, going on to call it a general name for the land, people, language, clothing, shelter, and institutions of the state, adding that, as such, it was only natural that it changed with the times. But then a bunch of people disagreed with him, and it was generally just a mess. So, how did all this lead to World War II? I'm getting there. Soon after they formed this constitution, they were incredibly successful in 2 wars. The first of these wars was the First Sino-Japanese War from 1894 to 1895. By the way, those white guys in the uniforms on the left in this Japanese painting represent the Japanese. Draw what conclusions from that you will. And the second of these wars was the Russo-Japanese War from 1904 to 1905. I know, historians are terrible at naming things. Anyways, these overwhelming victories so soon after supposedly defining the identity of Japan cemented in the minds of many that the identity of Japan was war, or was at least being good at war. After this, Japan was pretty unified in its purpose and began to bully China and Vietnam, but not Russia because, Russia's scary. Anyway, these small conflicts eventually led, after like some exploding railroad tracks and really bad espionage, to the Second Sino-Japanese War, which, if you believe a lot of historians, and I'm one of them, was the beginning of World War II. So, before there was Hitler, before there was Mussolini, before there was even World War I, before the 20th century, Japan was already preparing for what would become the first shots of World War II. So, here's my challenge for you. You make your own So What history video and focus on something that you think isn't looked at enough when we study history. Make sure that it's at least 2 to 5 minutes long, that you have at least 10 appropriate images, and that you have all of your sources referenced at the end of the video. Thank you, and I can't wait to see what you come up with.